Hey there, yoga lovers. Welcome to Talk Yoga to Me. We're thrilled to have you with us as we dive into all things yoga. Whether you're on the mat, in your car, or just relaxing at home, we're here to chat about poses, philosophy, teaching tips, and so much more. So go ahead, roll out your mat, take a deep breath, and let's get started. Talk Yoga to Me, and welcome to 2025.
2025, we made it! So this episode we're talking about new year and new intentions. We're going to start with the importance of setting a new year, new intention. And one of the things that means to me is taking the time to acknowledge the change you've experienced over the past year, right? We are not the same person today that we were at the beginning of 2024, and we won't be the same person at the end of 2025. And I think it's important to acknowledge that the only constant in life is change, and we can set intentions to help direct the change that we see in our lives, which makes things like New Year intentions or resolutions really important things to set throughout the year. Jimmy, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I love that because you can't, like, if you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you want to go? And if you reflect on the last year and the changes, some for good, some for maybe bad, quote unquote, that can give you the information of, okay, how do I want to try and steer or use my intention to guide this next year of change, rather than coming from a place of just taking out all this outside information from other people about, goals that maybe not, or intentions that might not pertain to what we actually want at our core for ourselves.
Yeah,
so I love that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah,
I think it's a good concept to be an active participant in your own life, right? You know the direction that you want to go, and your life can be a series of choices and things you do versus always looking at things that happen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think
checking in too,
checking in,
back
yeah.
in and reflecting, examining our lives over the last year is a big part to springboard us into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have some examples of ways that you set goals for your new year?
So yeah, I really try to focus on an incremental goal. So like small changes for me personally are my best strategy, because I can get really overwhelmed if I'm like, oh, I want to do, some huge goal.
Yeah.
And maybe that is like the long-term goal, but I need to break it down into small steps. So like for me, years ago, whenever I wasn't in my best health and wasn't taking the best care of myself, I was like, okay, I want to intentionally live a more gentle life and be more active in my health. So I literally just started with, I want to increase my water intake. And I did that for 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks.
Amazing.
Till I felt confident in that. I was like, okay, I can, and it's like changing one variable at a time. And the scientific method is the way to see if it's working for you. So rather than me trying to change everything at once, which would be overwhelming, and I wouldn't have the data to come back of like, did that make me feel better? Or did it just like, is it a placebo kind of thing? So yeah, drink more water. If that's like your one and your microcosm of a healthier year, you could start there. And it too allows you to have the confidence that, oh wow, I did that. I increased my water, and then the next month maybe it's, I want to be more active, so I'm going to go on a 20-minute walk 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And tracking that. And those are like attainable things that aren't some big goal that you're going to get overwhelmed and kind of shut out of it.
But it's parts of the whole, right? Because I absolutely agree with you. Any big goal that I have, or even medium-sized goal that I have, I'm like, how can I turn this one thing that I want to do into a list of 100 baby steps, and every day just check little things I've accomplished, and then before you even realize it, you're well on your way to being there, and you get to start to see the change and things like that, and making this whole overwhelming goal just one attainable, easy to achieve item one day at a time.
Yeah.
So I love that. We're totally on the same page with things like that. And I love the idea of like breaking it down and creating habits and tracking it, because I think it's so important to, I like to track a lot of things. I like to write down what I've done, how I did it, how long I did things, and then see how all of those actions added up to where I am today, which is really cool.
Yeah,
right?
habit tracking is great. I mean, I haven't done it in a while. I think I did it 2023 for like 6 months, but it's cool. You can track even, and it's really easy, just like with graph paper. You know, you have your days of the month across the top, the habits you want to track, and it can be even things of, for me, after a while, I was like, okay, I don't want to eat out, and not only health-wise, but money-wise.
Yeah.
I don't want to be eating out, so
Financial health.
yeah, you know, you can track so many different things, and you know, it's just the end of the day, you're just like checking off the little boxes. It's not real hard, but it gives you that feedback of, okay, this last like week I didn't feel as good. Oh well, I didn't get outside, you know.
Right.
Or I didn't, you know, get a little exercise in.
Yeah.
Maybe
and it's okay
that.
to see that pattern type thing and also be okay with it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. Like acceptance of whatever feelings come up, I think is really important. In that process of change, you're going to have resistance, either, you know, some emotional or mental thing that no longer serves you in the past is going to come up, and being able to recognize like, okay, I need to accept this feeling. I need to see where it's coming from, sit with it a bit, not resist it, because if you're trying to fight it, it's just going to make your change harder.
Yeah.
You got to accept what is and then work from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes things take longer than planned, and that's okay too, right? Like, just because we set a goal for 2025 doesn't mean that we're going to achieve it in 2025. It means that by the end, if we follow all of our ideas, then we'll be one step closer by the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
And all that change, it's kind of like enjoying the journey more than the destination, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it changes, you know, what
Pivoting,
you, yeah. That's all right.
Let's talk about some, how do we come up with ideas for our New Year's resolutions? Or new intentions? Because that can be overwhelming in and of itself. Like, when I think about things that I want to do and accomplish and all these things, I am just like, where can I start? What do I want? I want all things. I want to do everything. I want to be able to, and I have to be more realistic with what it is that I'm truly trying to achieve. So one thing that I did with 2024, which was really helpful, was kind of focusing on a word, a theme, and I didn't really have a tangible goal for 2024, but that's something that people do have. Like, you can have your year be based around a word, you can have it be based around a theme, you can have it be based upon a tangible goal that you want to achieve, right? My word for 2024 was thrive. I was like, I want to go from this state of always feeling like I'm in survival mode, just barely keeping my head above water, to being like, I'm going to thrive this year. And whatever that means, I'm just going to change my mindset and I'm going to be in a state of thriving. How do you come up with your ideas? So, you know, you want to focus on being healthier and you start with water intake or things like that. But how do you come up with that idea in the first place?
Yeah, I think making the space for yourself of reflecting on pain points, you know, the last year or even 5 years, however long you want to go back. But like, what has been some of the things, the sticky points where like maybe you were struggling with something or I was struggling with something, wasn't feeling great about myself in a certain area. And it's like reclaiming that and accepting whatever emotion, thoughts about myself I took on, whether they be negative or positive, around that thing. So like for me, a lot of time it was like I felt so incapable. Like I didn't have the ability to see a problem and see it through to its solution. Like something very basic, or in my mind basic, but really it's huge, right? And so for me, it was reflecting on, okay, why do I feel that way? And what are the small things that I can do externally to start to rewire my brain around that? Like, okay, I am capable of going on a walk. I am capable of having 3 meals a day. I am capable of starting to try new things, take a yoga class, get in a book club, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Like slowly expanding that horizon around whatever you're telling yourself is the limiting factor in your life. At least for me, that was the big impetus of change, I think. And accepting that like it's okay to feel negative feelings.
Yeah.
And whatever those are, they're giving me the information that I need to get myself out of this current situation, to like propel me into what is good for me. And rather than ignore it or shut it down or push it away, use it to kind of propel, how you want your intention or your change to be over the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you do when unexpected things set you back?
Yeah. It's hard.
It is hard, isn't it?
Yeah. When these unexpected things, like you miss your little incremental goal for a couple weeks in a row, it's like you have to take a step back and be like, okay, what was different those last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Like first off, accepting, I feel a little bit defeated. I feel a bit of shame or whatever it may be because I'm not meeting my expectations, but also like it's literally just in my head. So like, let's feel it out. Let's think it out.
Yeah.
And see, what was going on 2 weeks ago that maybe caused me to not have the energy to go on that walk every couple days.
True.
Was there some emotional trigger or like work trigger that just took up more time or energy, and being okay with that, being okay with missing the mark, because the goal is to slowly change. It's not to meet 110% of your goal all the time. Like it's to work through these little barriers that are keeping us from moving forward. And if you can't fully accept and reflect on what those are, then you're just going to put an extra layer of like mud over trying to see into yourself and see into what you want to do. How do you handle like unexpected things that come up?
I'll probably cry if I talk about it, because when I share too much personal stuff, I cry. But so 2024, my goal was to thrive, right? Now I'm gonna cry. But I started that year off with my dog getting really sick. Here we go. And my dog died in the first half. So didn't feel very thrivey of it back then. Well, this is silly.
Not silly at all.
Anyways, so that was really hard. That was a hard place to be like, oh, I'm thriving right now as I watch my dog die. But at that same time where my dog was really sick, like I met one of my favorite Instagram yogis, because he came to Roasted to do a workshop. So it was like the world and the year and the time is full of ups and downs, and there's always going to be things that set you back, and there's always going to be little moments of like beauty in everything. So it didn't feel very thrivey the first half of the year. I also had to go say goodbye to my grandma, which was hard. Same time. Anyways. Wow, this is so silly, Jimmy.
No, it was
I didn't think that this was going to happen. Anyways, so that happened, and that was also very hard. And then it was probably about 4th of July week. Those are little setbacks that made me feel not so thrivey. And those are hard obstacles to overcome, because I'm like, I'm supposed to not feel like I'm surviving and down and sad all the time. I'm supposed to feel like I'm doing big things and loving life and stuff like that. So it was really the little moments for me during that time that were really special for me. And then after that, get through the first half of the year, I kind of felt something similar to what you were talking about, where I was like, I don't feel my best mental health self. I don't feel my best physical health self. I was probably the most unhealthy that I've ever been during that time frame of my life, because we had so much going on. And I was like, I just need a change. So I was like, I want to get back to, I also had to stop and reflect on what my goals for 2024 were, so that I could reassess and repivot and realize that those things weren't items that I expected to happen to me, or happen to experience. They didn't really happen to me, I just experienced them. And I was like, how am I going to pivot back to this idea of thriving? And I was like, I think I'm just going to take control. Like you said, you reflect on the hard things. And I was like, I'm going to take control of my health. I'm going to take control of my time. I'm going to stop saying yes to everything. And so I think it was right about 4th of July week. I was at a beach week with my family, and I was like, you know what? Once I get home, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to take my health I'm going to make my health my top priority, because when you feel better, you do better type thing. So I quit drinking. I started running and working out on a regular basis. I started doing more of my home practice that I'd been away from for so long because I was just at it. And I think that was really important for me to have the ability to take the time to be like, ugh, this is not thriving. I got through the hard things that I needed to get through, and now it's time to refocus. Yeah. So I think that brings up, one of the points that you had mentioned was coming back to the core, is what I assume that would relate to.
Exactly. And I mean, it's so, dealing with loss is such a hard thing, and is not a straight line, and you being able to notice that, like, finding the small moments to, like, help get you through is so huge.
Yeah.
And, like, know that, I'm not thriving right now, but, like, I'm dealing with a lot, so I'm going to thrive on the back burner. And, like, enjoy the moments that come along and experience them that I can, while, like, trying to process all these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a hard thing to do, but
I'm sure I'm not the only person that's ever experienced, trying to thrive and being like, so many awful things are happening, and how do you get back to it? Because that's part of life. The only thing guaranteed in life.
Yeah.
So it's things that happen, and it's things you grow from, but you have to be able to make the time and take the time, make the space to come back to what your original intentions were, right?
Yeah. And noticing, the core of, like, okay, for you, what does thrive is, like, carving out time and space for yourself.
Yeah.
Having a healthy boundary, like having, feeling better in your body by maybe letting go of drinking or other things that aren't serving you, and coming back to that core. Sounds like it kind of helped you pivot, like halfway through the year.
It did, because at some point I was like, what have I done to achieve this idea of thriving? And I'm like, how do I even define? And then that's the next thing. How do you define these words, right? What I think of thriving is different than what you think of thriving, is different than what others think of thriving. And I was like, I just want to have the time and the space to enjoy downtime, sunsets, my family, things like that. And that was really what thriving was. I was really into stress management. And I think it's cool because when you come up with these kind of like intentions and you keep coming back to them throughout the year, like as yoga teachers, we can find little ways to sprinkle those into our classes, whether it's an explicit, I'm telling you the theme of this class, and it's going to be that, you are enough, you're thriving, we're doing, or if it's more of an implicit theme where I'm just creating classes that hopefully make the majority of people feel like they're doing big things, even just on their mat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And reminding them, like, you're so strong. You got this.
Yes.
Look at you go. You're floating. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think coming back to the core too can be just like what you're saying. Even for other people, we see these themes differently, but even for ourselves, it can change throughout the year.
True.
Of coming back to it, like, you might stray. Maybe you got a little too intense on, now you're, walking 30 miles a week and your ankles and your joints are all hurting. Like, okay, that's not health, what is the core? Like, feeling good in your body is going to be different for everyone and at different times. Like in the holidays, maybe that's when you allow yourself to eat all the cheese and the sweets, and because like that's feeling good in your body versus like being rigid and not allowing yourself some joy in your intentions, like, yeah, letting it be fluid,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But still circling back to what you actually wanted at the beginning of the year.
So we are officially 7 days into the new year. At the time this video. What have you already set New Year, new intentions for 2025?
A bit, yes. So one of them, and I've already kind of kickstarted because my boyfriend's really into the Sarah J. Maas, if I'm saying that right, books, and so like in like March, I think I read the first one. So I've slowly kind of built back into my reading habit, and that's felt really good. So I think I read like 6 books last year, which like most of them were in the last 2 months. But so, that's my big one of I want to get back into, and it's an overarching goal, but like my incremental one is to read more, but the overarching is to build my endurance. I feel like I've lost so much of it, like in this 10-second video reel world. My attention span in conversations and TV shows, like movies, I am drifting so quick.
Yep.
If it's something that's holding my attention, like a yoga class or like a good book, I can allow that time to expand.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that even just the last 2 months of reading a little bit more, I'm able to stay in the present moment with like conversations better. And so endurance of presence, staying in the present, something along those lines.
I love it. So like your word theme is presence.
Yeah.
And we accomplish that through reading more.
Yeah, the incremental goal of reading more.
I love that. That's amazing.
What about you? Have you had a theme or?
So it's funny because we're always like new year, new me. It's the first. We have to start on the first. All these things, but in reality, we don't have to start on the first. We can take a week or two to kind of figure things out. And I feel like with the busy holiday season that I haven't had the time to sit, to reflect, to envision what I want 2025 to feel like. So one of my goals for myself this week is to take that time, to create that space, to sit down undisturbed in the quiet, usually first thing in the morning before I'm jaded from the day, with a cup of coffee on my yoga mat, and actually think about what I want my 2025 theme or word or goal to be. I really enjoyed this concept of thriving in 2025, but I feel like I just sense it not thriving in 2025, or I enjoyed it in 2024, and I don't think that I'm going to move away from that in 2025, but it's more so like stacking. I'm going to be thriving, but in a more specific way, type thing. So I think looking at some of that, and doing it I just like giving myself the time and the space to kind of hone in on what that means to me. My kids are also getting older, and I'm like, man, one of the things that I really want 2025 to be about is time. The time that I get to spend with them before they are, my daughter's 16, before she's out of the house completely type thing. So, and when I look back at, videos from last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'm like, look at how little you guys were and things like that. And I'm like, time is literally flying by. So I think my 2025 is going to be focused around time, like taking the time to do things. It is worth it to go stop and watch the sunset. My kids are old enough now that I can call my daughter and be like, hey, meet me at the beach. We're going to watch the sunset together. And she'll stop by. She loves it, right?
Cute, yeah.
So taking time, that's, maybe I just figured it out.
But yeah, you may have. It seems like it. But also I think that's an important thing to note of it doesn't have to always just be on December 31st of every year. It should be a continual thing, and that you recognize like thrive is still your kind of overarch, but like you've got more specific areas you want to be thriving in. Is awesome. And like taking that time, because it's taking the time for yourself, but also taking the time to reflect whenever it comes, because it's not going to be linear, where our days and weeks and months, especially on the holidays, are just crazy.
Yeah.
So recognizing that, yeah, you still want to take some reflection before you set out on your intention for the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I love all that.
Absolutely. So I think we should recap like key takeaways from today's pod.
Yeah, let's do it.
Key takeaways. What do you got for us?
So the importance of intentions are it's that kind of fire underneath you that you want to forge something new into your life. And then also like using that as your kind of jumping off point of how do I break this down into incremental small pieces that are actually achievable on like a day-to-day basis, but not overwhelming. That was the kind of the first two.
Yeah, absolutely. And then creating the idea of where that intention is going to come from, right? We break down these small goals and it's kind of like the idea is what is the common denominator in there? What can you incorporate into all of those small goals that creates this overarching theme? And sometimes your goals can be tangibles too. Like, I don't know, if you're like, hey, I want to be able to squat this many pounds. That's a tangible goal, right? That you can kind of start to work up to it. But you have to be ready to accept the unexpected. Just because you made the goal doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Have you heard of SMART goals before?
No.
SMART goals. So, SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based.
Okay.
So sometimes when I set goals like that, I break it down and I'm like, was this a SMART goal or
not so smart?
Yeah, but those are important things to look at when you have those tangible goals, and you need to be prepared to pivot with unexpected things, right? It's holidays, it's energy levels, it's things that are happening that are moving outside of your control, which is cool. So having the idea, having a SMART goal, and then being prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah. And then, yeah, coming back to the core of what was that theme, that goal, that word or intention, and what can I do to bring it back into my day-to-day life? Or does it need to change? Being open to pivoting if that seems right for you in achieving your intention. Well, that was today's podcast. Thank you all.
It was so lovely for you guys to all be here. Happy 2025. If you have a goal, a theme, a word that you're carrying with you for 2025, message it to us, leave it in the comments. We love inspiration, we love hearing from you, and ultimately this is all about reaching you and creating a little bit of community. So until next time.